Hey, everybody, and welcome to today's Daily Distinction. I'm really glad that you are here today. We're going to have kind of a shortened version today because of a commitment that I have coming up here in just a few minutes. But I just wanted to check in with everybody today. Hope you're having a good day. You know, today, 9/11 is a day that will always bring about memories for many of us. I'm going to share mine here in a couple of minutes. That's what we're going to talk about today is the remembrance of 9/11 and what we can learn from that. Not necessarily from the tragedy and the terrorist act, but where we are and what we are. We're gonna chat about that for a few minutes today. So glad that you were here, and it's going to be a positive show, even from a very negative experience. So, Ted, how you doing today? So glad that you were here. Brian is back in the saddle. Oh, man, you did a layover. You make it quick. You probably flew over the house, Brian. I hope you waved as you were passing over, huh? Good to see you. Curtis in Mesa, Arizona today. Curtis, it's almost like a travelogue when I follow where you are. You're here in Oregon. Now I'm in Arizona, New Mexico. It's just amazing. Great to see you. Donovan, is always good to see you. Thank you for being here on this day. I really, really appreciate that. Thank you for your time, and thanks everybody for being here. Hey, Scott, we are doing great. Yes, we're going to have a fabulous weekend. I'm going to tell you more about that in just a minute. So appreciate it. And Charles from cool San Jose. I know, it's 82 in Vegas. That sounds warm, but man, when we were at 115 in the backyard, 82 sounds like a very cool day. And I know it's cooler in San Jose. So hope you're doing great today, Charles. Thank you for being here. Darcy, as always, thank you for being here. Hope you're ready for a great weekend as well. Thanks to those of you that are watching on replay as well. Gosh, our replay viewership is really strong, and I'm so grateful for that. Hey, the reminder, go to Distinction Summit. If you haven't signed up, why not? Man, we got some big announcements next week. Cool speakers, cool folks that are going to be a part of it. It's the Stand Out, Earn More Summit. How do you stand out from your competition? How do you earn more? October 16th through 18th. Sign up now. I appreciate it. Brian, I bet you are busy catching up, huh? Oh, thanks. Oh, you bet. We got a lot. Matter of fact, I just finished recording the next to the last module for post-pandemic events. So we've been excited about that. And 67 degrees in dark. Oh, is that from the fires, Charles? Is the reason it's dark there? I'm assuming it is. Or is it just gloomy and cloudy today? Interesting. I don't know. So at any rate, well, today is 9/11, as you know, and it's the 19th anniversary of what happened in New York City. And where were you when you heard the news? Where were you when you found out about what happened with 9/11? It's one of those. I bet it's the same way for you. There was a lot of talk about where were you if you're old enough. Where were you when you found out President Kennedy was shot? Folks in their 60s, 70s, 80s will remember exactly where they were the moment that they learned that President Kennedy was shot. Where were you when you found out Martin Luther King or Robert F. Kennedy had been assassinated? I remember my mom coming in the bedroom. We had bunk beds, and my mom waking me up to tell me that, because I'm a political junkie and love that. And I can't remember my exact age, but 68. Yeah. So I was in the bunk bed, and mom came in, and I remember and woke me up, and because it had happened late in the evening California time, and I was on Indiana time, so it wasn't until the next morning that she found out, and I just remember laying in the bunk bed stunned. So we're in 9/11 is one of those things as well. Oh, so it's all from the fires, Charles. Wow. Because we've kind of had a haze all the way down here in Vegas, but I didn't realize oh, that's so sad. That is so sad. Brian, junior year, you're undergrad at a friend's house, living off campus. Yeah. Charles, at the gym, watching the news from the treadmill. Wow. Um, so where were you when you found out about 9/11? I was in Nashville, Tennessee. Um, I was getting ready to play golf with my friends from Diamond Rio. And Diamond Rio was having their annual golf tournament that day. They did an annual golf tournament for a charity. Their charity was Big Brothers and Big Sisters. And, I went every year and I stayed. Brian Prout, my buddy that's the drummer, stayed at his house. And uh, we were at the golf course. And my then wife, my late wife, Sherry, called and said a plane had just flown into the World Trade Center. And part of what really struck both of us about that, impacted both of us about that, was that just the day before, Sherry had been on the phone with somebody in the World Trade Center because I was scheduled to speak at a meeting in the World Trade Center on September the 18th. And one of the things we talked about was, we were living in the California and Los Angeles area at the time, Westlake Village. And we were talking about, since I was already back to Tennessee, should I just go back up to Indiana and see family before going on to New York? Or because, of when it happened, she was dealing with a health situation that we didn't realize at that time it was as serious as it was. But should I go back to California for a few days and then fly all the way back to New York City? We had been debating that, talking about that. And because she had just talked to somebody in that building, the day before, it was just really, and I was booked to speak there in a week, it was really impactful. And there weren't any TVs around where I was. And I said, oh my gosh, I bet, and if you heard about it before you saw it, I'll bet your response is similar to mine. I thought like a private plane, a guy had a heart attack or a gal had a heart attack flying a private plane and accidentally flown into the building. And I said, oh my gosh, how awful. I even said to her on the phone, I bet somebody's had a heart attack and flown into and she said, oh, no. It's much, much worse than that. It is like a passenger jet. Well, that just seemed impossible to me, right? Why would and so then we got on the Diamond Rio bus where they had the television sets and we're watching the TVs and that's where I was when the second plane hit. And it's funny how you make decisions in life that you would probably, if you had to do it over again, would you make the same decision? And it's one of those that I supported the decision as it was made at that time. And I think a lot of us would go back and reconsider it and think about it. But we went ahead, they went ahead. I said, I was sitting right there and they asked my opinion as we were all making the decision. It was their decision, but they asked my input. And we played the golf tournament that day. And there was a criticism of that in the Nashville paper. But sitting there, part of what we were saying was, this is a terrorist attack on our nation. And this is to raise money for kids who need these resources. And if we cancel the meeting, all of the activities that are going on during this day that will raise money, everybody goes home and it wouldn't happen. And so the drive was, we can't let a terrorist activity stop us from raising money for needy kids. Now, in hindsight, if you'd had some time to think about it or knew the impact of it, we would have probably made a different decision. I remember Marty Rowe, the lead singer, who is a very devout Christian, just praying this impassioned prayer for our nation and even saying during the prayer, the only reason that we're doing this is to make certain that young people who need resources have them and that the terrorists can't shut us down. But boy, what a strange day. And I think as it was happening, and this is before the towers fell, so as this was happening, you didn't totally realize how significant it was going to be. But oh my gosh, Darcy, one of your coworkers was in Tower 2, lives to tell about it. My goodness. Donovan, living room of your first apartment, turned on the TV to see the second plane hit the tower. Oh, Scott was packing his bags to head to Korea. Oh, wow. Told your wife, and then we watched the second one hit the second tower. Unbelievable. Yeah. So it isn't it interesting now that we are such a divided nation, it seems, and I'm not being saying one side's right or the other side's wrong or whatever. I'm just saying it's obvious that in so many ways we are a divided nation. Isn't it amazing how we all came together at that particular time? How tragic is it that it takes such an event like that to inspire us getting together? But yet, isn't that kind of the way it always is in so many ways? You know, we appreciate our health more when we get sick or when somebody near us gets sick. We appreciate our kids more after they've gone away to college. We appreciate it seems like there's something in the human experience that it takes something like that to inspire the way we ought to be anyway. Again, you've heard me say it before, but familiarity does not breed contempt. It breeds complacency. And so we get complacent about our health, and we get complacent about our relationships, we get complacent about our nation, and we get so complacent about so many things because we take it for granted. And that's part of the challenge of all of this. I can never express enough my appreciation to my buddy Brian, because there was a meeting, you know, all the airlines shut down and everything, and I couldn't get back home to California, and there was a meeting that was held. They didn't postpone the meeting because it was at French Lick, Indiana, which, by the way, if you're unfamiliar with French Lick, most of it know it as the town Larry Bird is from. You got to check out the resort at French Lick. It is amazing. It is so extraordinary. It is one of the greatest resorts in America. French Lick, Indiana. Check it out. And there was a meeting being held there. And so Brian lent me his car so I could drive from Nashville up to French Lick and go to the meeting and speak at the meeting, and then come back and fly out of Nashville and get back home to California at that time. And then I gave what was at least what the mayor's office there in New York City called the first major convention, first major meeting held in New York City after 9/11. And Mayor Giuliani couldn't be there because President Bush was visiting New York City that day. So the vice mayor of New York City was there. And there's a funny story about the presentation that he made. I won't go into, but he heard my speech and he said, would you like a tour? And so I had the chance to go down and tour the site. And you know, I'll never forget during the tour, it looked like, and this is a strange analogy, but it looked like there was confetti. Like there'd been a parade and there was all this confetti. And I you know, like little tiny squares of paper that you just, you know, but it was wet. It was like damp, rained on, wet. And it was a rainy day when I was there, and it was so appropriate because it was so gloomy. And so the police officer that was taking me around said that words I'd never will forget. And he said, and I had been I'd had dinner at the top floor of the World Trade Center and all that. But he said, think about how much your desk weighs. Okay. He said, do you have a file cabinet that you're all? Yeah. He said, so think about all the paper in that. Think about that for your office. And then magnify that over the 80 or so offices, and probably more than that, I'll say 100 offices on each floor. Now take that times the number of floors in the World Trade Center. And then take that times 2 buildings. Think about just how many, and all of that paper and all of the desks and all of the file cabinets and all of is just flattened and compressed. Just amazing. There was a smell there that I cannot describe. I haven't smelled it before or since, but anybody that was there at that time, everybody I've talked to about that remembers that they didn't, you know, it was a combination of things that had been burned and the rubble and the concrete and just horrifying, just Just amazing. Yet, I want to suggest to you not to overlook the tragedy and the death and the destruction that day. But I want to suggest to you that out of tragedy can come triumph. Out of tragedy can come triumph. It was a setback, it was not a defeat. Whether you look at that in terms of terrorism, whether you look at that in terms of, that we finally got Osama bin Laden, regardless of how you look at it, the fact is that there has been triumph that came out of that. Now, I read somewhere that maybe we ought to stop thinking about 9/11 as this date. And I'm going to suggest to you it is healthy to revisit. When I was going through the aftermath of the death of my wife, Sherry, one of the smartest things that I heard as I was dealing with counseling was that the people that have the most trouble are the people who don't revisit and talk about their past. If you don't talk about your past, what have you learned from it? And what kind of person would you be to forget it? It's healthy for us to talk about this. It is healthy for us to revisit this. It is healthy. It is mentally healthy for us to be able to have these conversations about it. However, it wouldn't be healthy to dwell on it. There's a difference between remembering and revisiting and living in the past and dwelling on the past. I would suggest that principle is true, regardless of whether we're talking about 9/11 or whether we're talking about things that have happened to you. We have all had tragedy. And one of the things that I learned through the process of losing my first wife is that everybody hurts. I don't know where your hurt is, but I know you got one. We've all had something that's happened to us that has ripped our hearts out. And I want to suggest there's nothing at all wrong with you revisiting that and thinking about that and learning from that and applying that. In fact, if you don't, you're burying it in a manner that is not healthy. But it is also not healthy to live in the past. Hey, you've heard me say the old line. I mean, it is so old, but it is so good. It is so true. There is a reason the windshield is bigger than the rearview mirror. We're supposed to look at where we're going, not where we've been, most of the time. In other words, you want the rearview mirror there to see what's behind you. You need that to properly navigate. You need that to properly advance. Yet the bulk of your time, the majority of your time, the focus of your time should be on where you're going, not where you've been. It doesn't exclude what's behind you, but it doesn't focus on that. The best quote I heard about this is from the legendary Helen Keller. Now think about it. If you are familiar with Helen Keller, just read her bio on Wikipedia. Just do a Google search. Particularly at the time that she was born, in terms of the lack of technology and communication and all that. She is born deaf and blind. How would you ever teach language, or how would you ever teach whatever to someone who was born both deaf and blind? How would you get through? That's what the story The Miracle Worker is about. The great, great movie with Anne Bancroft and Patty Duke. It just extraordinary. How would you get through? Well, my late wife's sister, there was an eye disease in their family, retinitis pigmentosa, RP, same one that Steve Wynn has of note here in Las Vegas. And Sherry had three sisters that were vision impaired, were blind. And Leslie, the youngest one, married a blind guy. And they used to talk about, was it better to be blind from birth, where you didn't know what you were missing, or, as the case with Leslie, her youngest sister, that had gradually gone blind through the progression and advancing of RP? And Leslie always said, and I thought this was such an amazing, phenomenal, fantastic attitude, that she would rather have gone blind in the way that she did than in the way that her husband had. And why is that? Well, because if you say blue, I know what you're talking about. If you say an apple, I know what one looks like. What an incredibly positive thing. But imagine that you couldn't describe what blue was, or what you couldn't describe what an apple looked like. I mean, how do you get through? And they finally did. They did with Helen Keller, who became one of the most influential people of the 20th century. And the quote from Helen Keller is simply this: "The world is full of suffering. It is also full of the overcoming of it." Man, that's profound. That is so good. Charles, we can never forget this day, the tragedy, the loss of life, or government failures. Yes, if we forget, we're doomed to let it, those who do not learn the lessons of history are doomed to repeat it. Yes, absolutely. Still go to therapy for counseling for your near-death experience and the loss of your dad 9 months apart. And boy, that is so important, Ryan. I've told the story before, but one of the questions I asked the therapist was, I was just hurting so bad. And I said, "How long does it take to get over this?" And instantly she said, "Oh, you'll never get over this. You'll never get over it." And what kind of jerk would you be if you could? You live with somebody for 20 and you're going to get over it? And I think that's where we have to be with this too. We're not going to just get over it. It becomes part of the fabric of our life, as Charles said, that we got to go back and remember. Being vulnerable and transparent is healthy, and it ain't easy. You are so right, Brian. Jason, how you doing, my friend? Driving my truck down US 31, just past Shirley's, eat here and get gas restaurant, gas station. Yeah, I know exactly where you were talking about. Yeah, what a day. Darcy, 9/12 marks the 29th anniversary of the car crash in which I was the only backseat survivor. Oh, man. You've done that, Darcy. You've turned triumph into tragedy. Yeah. You have done that. And that has provided you the story. Now, as all of us would recognize, that's what a way to, you wish that would not have happened, but you have to take what's happened and make it the best that you can. And that's exactly what you're doing. And it's exactly what we're trying to do here. So let me tie a ribbon around the story, because this also has an interesting aspect for my life as well. Just through a fluke coincidence, 9/11 is also the commemoration of the first date I had with Tammy. And when my life kind of got I began to think that there was hope for recovery. So we go out to dinner on 9/11, both to commemorate the solemn occasion of the day and to toast that this was the anniversary of the day we met. So the world is full of suffering, and it's also full of the overcoming of it. So wherever you're hurt and wherever your challenge is, take it seriously. Remember it, revisit it, because that's healthy. But man, don't live there. Don't dwell there. Overcome that challenge. Well, that does it for today. I said it was going to be a short version. I got to sprint to my next thing that's coming up here. But I appreciate your participation today and you sharing where you were. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow on our abbreviated weekend edition of Daily Distinction. Thank you for being here. If you're tuned in late, check out the distinctionsummit.com. I'd love to have you there for that event as well. And I look forward to talking to you tomorrow on the next Daily Distinction. Thanks so much for being here.